Good morning, everyone. I'm Ernestine Nettles, President of the League of Women Voters, Oakland, reminding you democracy is not a spectator sport. We all must do our part, vote, and encourage everyone around us to vote. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, Oakland, I welcome you to our 2025 Voter Education and Candidates Forum. We are a 100% volunteer organization, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to fostering information, civic engagement. We are honored to provide this platform here today for candidates and community members to discuss the issues that matter. At the League, we believe that voters have their say in this democracy. We look for a democracy that thrives on voters' access, fair, open, and respectful dialogue. Our goal today is to create a space where each candidate can share their vision and you as voters can gain insight needed to make an informed decision. We appreciate the candidates taking the time to be here today and their comments to the public and their commitment to the public service. We also thank the audience for your engagement in this democratic process. Let's ensure that today's discussions remain respectful, constructive, and focused on the issues. Please hold your comments and applause until the end of the forum, and welcome to our 2025 Candidate Forum.
Thank you, Ernestine. Welcome again to joining us for the forum for Oakland City Council District 2. I'm Helen Hutchison, and I'm a volunteer and member of the League of Women Voters of Oakland.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tracy Edwards Moore, also a member volunteer of the League of Women Voters, also a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. We are pleased to have as partners today Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Nu Omega Chapter, American Association of University Women, Oakland Piedmont Branch, Centers for Elders Independence, Centro Legal de la Raza, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Oakland Chinatown Coalition, Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce, Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association, SPUR, and two media partners, KTOP and KALW.
Thanks. So the League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League participates in issue advocacy and voter education. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues on ballot measures. This forum is presented by the education arm of the League, which does not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties, nor take positions on issues on ballot measures.
Before we introduce the candidates, we have a few logistical items to review. The candidates and our community partners have all agreed to participate under the guidelines set for this forum. The candidate forums today are being televised by KTOP, Oakland's cable access station, and live streamed on the city's website, www.oaklandca.gov/OaklandMeeting. The forums are being recorded and can be viewed later on the League of Women Voters Oakland's website or YouTube channel. And the recording of this event is owned by the League of Women Voters Oakland. Filming or recording these sessions by anyone other than KTOP is not permitted.
So there are 6 candidates running for the City Council District 2. They are Kanitha Maturi, Reverend Kenneth Anderson, Paula F.L. Thomas, Charlene Wong, Harold Lowe III, and Kara Murray Badell. There will be 6 candidates listed on your April 15th ballot. Kantitha Murthy is a candidate for this office, and she is not attending this forum. She is here. She appeared too late. Sorry.
So here's our process for this forum. The speaking order of the candidates has been randomly assigned. Candidates will have, we need to have one voice. Okay. Candidates, we need to have one voice. And there were guidelines set out at the beginning. Okay. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. The first question will be addressed by all candidates. After that, each question will be addressed to groups of 3 candidates. There will be no separate rebuttals. However, the candidate may choose to use some or all of their 1.5 minutes to rebut the response given by another candidate or to address a topic from a previous question. Following the questions, each candidate shall have 1.5 minutes for a closing statement. Please keep an eye on the timekeepers, who will signal candidates with different color signals marked 30 seconds remaining and stop. As moderators, we may verbally give these prompts as well. Some questions for this forum have been prepared in advance by the League of Women Voters and our partners.
We will also take live questions from the audience who are here with us in person. If you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand and one of our volunteers will give you an index card to write that question on. Please keep your questions succinct and directed to all the candidates, not individual candidates. We'll try and include as many of those questions as time allows. Before we begin, candidates, in order to be heard, you need to turn the mics on. You've gotten instructions about that. When you're done speaking, please do turn it off. And then one final request of everybody here today, candidates and audience. Please be polite and use civil language. Show respect for one another. We're all here because we care deeply about Oakland, and we may disagree about how to address some of the issues, but we can be respectful and civil in our discussions. And I'm going to ask the audience to please hold your applause to the very end so that we can use all our time to hear from the candidates.
All right, so now's the time for the candidates to answer questions. The first question is going to go to all candidates, and we're going to start with Kara Oh, is it Kenneth? Yeah. Okay. We're going to start with Reverend Kenneth Anderson, and here is the question. Oakland has projected a potential $280 million deficit in the next several years. What can you realistically do in the short term to begin to reclaim fiscal health for the city?
We all know, and I believe all of us in here love eggs, and eggs have went up. And regardless of the price of eggs, we buy them. I support the sales tax. As Oakland residents, we have to all get into this together. And also, when it comes to the budget, we have to look at Measure A, a proposed 0.5% sales tax to increase, aims to provide funding for essential city services, which we really need.
Just maybe. Thank you.
Moving on, Ms. Thomas? Yep.
Hi, good morning. I'm Paula Thomas, and what I would do to take care of this deficit problem is I would start generating income. The city of Oakland has many vacant properties that have not that they are not doing anything with. Those need to be sold immediately. And I am personally a commercial real estate broker, so I know how to sell those. And I could easily work with a real estate company. I'm sure if we put a bid out, we could get some people to respond, and we could get those properties sold immediately. That would be number one. Number two, I would set up a leasing program for all the vacant properties that the city owns that are just, sitting there, languishing. We could set up, we could attract anchor stores. That would be number 2. And thirdly, we'd have to ensure safety. So I think we need to use private security while we hire for a reserve police force. Okay? There's problems with policing, and the reason there's problems is because we don't have enough police, but we do have reserve police force, and they are now working at the housing authority, but we can recruit more of those, just like Berkeley has done. We need to meet with them, see how they're handling their reserve police force, and get some good community, policing immediately. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Wong.
Hi, yes. This is my top priority. We are headed towards bankruptcy, and we've seen in other cities what a disaster it is when we head this way. So I analyzed the budget problem twofold. First, we have to generate more revenues. There's a number of ways that we can go about achieving this. First of all, we really need to have a more serious grant writing operation. I'm uniquely qualified to do this, given my experience standing up grant programs and also administering them and helping communities apply to grants. Every member of my staff, should I get elected, will be part of the grant writing effort, so we no longer miss grants as we have done here in Oakland. The other thing that we need to do is staff up the affirmative litigation department in our city attorney's office. We've actually been able to bring in nearly $57 million by actually suing corporate polluters, people who provide lead in our pipes, asbestos, the opioid manufacturers, and actually bring in money through the city in that form. We also need to just have economic development. Paula has touched upon this. We can also use trash receptacles, bus shelters, different ways to bring in advertising dollars and actually ensure that our public lands are also used for mixed income development that's going to generate revenue. Finally, we need to also get very serious about the waste that is happening in our budget. It is real. We do not use performance-based budgeting here in Oakland, and we need to root that out. Thank you so much.
Mr. Lowe.
Good morning, everyone. The first thing that we have to realize is we have to cut costs and raise revenue. I don't believe that Measure A, however, is an option for us, because one of the things that's really challenging right now is with the structural deficit that we have to make sure that the trust comes from the community. We have no idea where the money is being hemorrhaged. We have no idea how we're going to be able to fix this right now. So I would not want to go to the community and say, give us $30 million more that we won't use this year, we possibly won't use next year, and we have no idea where it's going to be allocated. So I'm against Measure A for a variety of different reasons, including the fact that it's regressive, it would make Oakland more expensive than other surrounding areas, and we need people to bring resources here. We have to make sure that we have safety as a priority. We have hemorrhaged 6,000 businesses over the last half dozen years. We cannot tax our way out of this. If we keep losing the In-N-Out burgers and the Targets of the world, we're not going to be able to tax you as citizens to be able to make that happen. I think that the first thing that we should be doing internally is having an audit. We have a city auditor. That city auditor has been elected. We should let that city auditor look at the resources that we have internally to determine where our challenges are. From that point on, we can make different decisions based upon what happens. And finally, we've got to do renegotiations with our bargaining units. Nothing's left off the table, and we certainly have to make sure that folks who are part of 70% of our expenditures are people. We have to figure out ways to be able to. Thank you.
Ms. Murray Budell.
Yes. So the question was about the kind of short term, and I think that there are some things that are like the clear low-hanging fruit. So one of them is that we have not been enforcing our business tax as well. There's apparently $34 million roughly in estimated left on the table from not enforcing business taxes. We also haven't been staffing in the departments that raise the city money. So the DOT, for example, has open positions because they do parking enforcement and parking management. They actually typically make money when we hire in those roles, and so that's, I think, an obvious one. I do believe that grants is a big problem. We have not had a single person on the Metropolitan Transit Commission for, I think, several years now, and that is where all of the regional grants flow through. So the fact that we have not had anyone there for a year means that we have missed grants for a year. We also do already have a grant writer for the city of Oakland, and we still miss grants, and so I wouldn't dedicate my own staff, but I certainly think it is the role of the city council to pay attention to grant cycles and support the grant writing team in order to make that happen. I also really agree that an auditor is an important piece of the puzzle here. But the problem is, and I just came from a community meeting, the audits often take a long time, and by the time that the audit is complete, the council has changed, the city administrator has changed, and so we have to figure out a quicker cycle to be able to look into our internal systems. And just lastly, I do support the sales tax. I agree with Harold's point that the city has not done a good job of managing, but we're at a point where if we don't do that, we're going to have a really regressive system because our fire departments and our libraries are going to close. So we have to strike out, and my job is to have faith in, or to support you as the council person to pay attention.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is going to go to, we're going to do groups of 3, sometimes groups of 2, because we're missing a candidate, and my grid calls for 3, just so you know. We're going to start again with Reverend Anderson and Ms. Thomas and Ms. Wong. So safety has been a significant issue in Oakland. How do you propose managing safety and balancing it with all the competing demands on city resources?
When it comes to public safety, that is one of my primary focuses. If restaurants, if businesses, houses of worship want to be supported, they have to feel safe. Now, when it comes to public safety, we have to recognize addressing the crime and making sure that we don't defund our police force. We need our police force, and it goes back again to the budget on how we have to, as I support the sales tax, we have to create revenues for essential city services, whatever those city services. And then it goes back to public safety with the right grant writers, making sure that we have the right auditors, looking at where our funds are actually going. Solutions, alternatives such as the Mark Rowe program for mental health crisis and investments in violence prevention, and being emphasized on making sure that everyone wants to feel safe at all times, even in your own home. So we must continue to support our police force.
I agree with the Reverend. I think we need to do those things, but I think immediately we need to look at increasing our police force, and we can do that with a reserve police force. Just like Berkeley has done, they use part-time. They use this force part-time. They use retired police officers, dispatchers, whoever wants to apply, and a lot of those positions can be volunteer, and that's a way you can also increase the police force. So I think that would be first in public safety. Well, we know where the problems are. Currently, it's in the homeless shelter, homeless environment, so that would need to be addressed immediately. And then we want to hire police. While we're doing that, we want to hire police from our junior colleges and our state colleges. I think if we market it correctly, we can get in a good young group and then, train them the way that we need here in Oakland. Train them on de-escalation techniques and how to, manage problems and those that they don't need to be at. Then we can utilize ceasefire or macro for non-emergency quality of life issues that happen. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Wong.
We really have a dangerously understaffed police force at this moment. What we need here in Oakland is community policing. That is the model that has moved communities forward in the face of high rates of crime and gun violence, as well as mistrust in the police force. Here's a few things I'd like to do. Short term, we need to call on a regional mutual aid law enforcement agreement, as well as formalize an agreement with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office with a memorandum of understanding. Then medium term, what we do need to do is do hiring of more officers, especially from Oakland and our most disadvantaged communities. Here's a few ways that we can pay for it, because that is the looming question, right? The Department of Justice actually has a community-oriented policing grant program that pays for 75% of the hiring of officers. Let's apply to that. The state actually also has a few programs called Law Enforcement Specialized Unit Program. It's officers that are specialized in domestic violence and trafficking. That's a huge issue here in Oakland, as well as the issue of crimes against children. We also have a state program that also helps fund hiring programs. So we really need to go after this funding. And then on the other side of things here in Oakland, we also need to ensure that we create independent independent civilian oversight of the police department as we build out our police department. That way the community really trusts the police to not only do their job, but that issues of bribery and mistrust are rooted out of the police department. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move into our third question, and this will be for Harold Lowe III and Kara Murray Bedell. The question is around housing and shelter. So there are different possible priorities in addressing homelessness. Can you identify what your priorities are? Please be specific. What choice for building affordable housing, increasing shelter beds, assistance to prevent evictions or foreclosures, or rapid rehousing that you would choose given limited resources? Again, we're starting with Harold Lowe III.
All in 90 seconds.
All in 90 seconds.
I think that there are two issues with housing. We've understood for many years in the Bay Area that 500,000 units are needed to be able to make sure that we have the appropriate number of housing for folks here. We are not going to reach that number at a city level with our pro rata share for a variety of different reasons. And one of those reasons is that we don't have outside development coming in. The second reason is that we don't have development coming in that speaks to market rate housing. We keep having this dialectic about having market rate housing versus affordable housing versus low income housing. And we really should be looking at all steps to be able to mitigate that. The challenge for homeless, we had in Oakland about 5,500 homeless last year, in a city that has roughly 430,000 people. Chicago, by contrast, had 6,100 homeless people with a city with 2.7 million people. Homeless isn't just our issue of serving people in those areas. Homeless is figuring out what does the culture look like for our geography, how we're going to be able to make this happen. I'm a proponent of having mixed-use housing. I don't believe in concentrated poverty. I think that Oakland is one of the most impoverished cities in the state, and having people produces the negative externalities that we have. I think that we should be looking at having outside sources coming in and mitigating that by having people who have a variety of different areas to live in. And I do think that the homeless situation can be addressed with a lot of the open places that we have, including advocating for use of the old jail.
Thank you. Kara Murray Bedell, same question.
Yeah, this is my job. I work in housing affordability, so it's really hard not to just turn my nerd mode on and get really inaccessible. So I'm going to try to be tangible and focused. I think when we talk about housing and the housing crisis, the best way I've heard it discussed is to look at it through three lenses, which is supply, subsidy, and stability. So Harold talked a bit about the need for supply. Yes, rents are highly correlated with a bunch of things, but certainly homelessness is one of them. So high rents and lack of housing supply correlate to higher rents and make it really hard for people to live here. I think the part that, if you're talking about my highest priority, I think the part that gets underutilized or appreciated is the role of stability in keeping people housed. In the Bay Area, we actually do an okay job of exiting people from homelessness every year. The problem is that we are entering more people into homelessness every year. And the majority of people who are unhoused on our streets are Bay Area people who are from this community. And so the easiest time to stop homelessness is before it happens. We don't do a good job of protecting our residents and neighbors from eviction, and a lot of people lose their housing on a health crisis or a family member passing away. And we have to stop the flood of people into homelessness. The last part is that we have to have subsidy, and there's always going to be some amount of people who cannot pay any rent no matter how much market rate we have. There's always going to be that proportion, which is where we look at low-income housing tax credit. And I will say that Oakland is uniquely positioned to support low-income housing because we actually have a lot of land, and we've actually seen that we are able to do some of these housing projects because we have land that can make the capital stack, that can make the money work. And so all three of those have to be part of the solution.
Thank you. This next question is going to go to Ms. Thomas, Ms. Wong, and Mr. Lowe. Where do you anticipate grant money coming from when the current federal administration may reduce funding locally? And I'll add to that, and there's not a lot of funding available from the state either.
Well, my background is contracts and procurement and grant writing, so I have a lot of experience with that. I do know, like Charlene said, that the Department of Justice, they have lots of money for policing, security, and that money is available. So I think that's what we would focus on, and we would work with our partners. You know, we're close to Berkeley, we're close to San Leandro. They're having some of the same problems. We would talk to them and see how they're handling it. But I would also go for whatever the state has. You know, there is money out there, and then there are also philanthropy organizations that have money available. So we just want to focus in, get a team together, find out where the resources are, where the grants are, and then we want to get the staffing to get it done. And I can start writing grants immediately, and I will hire people who know how to do grant writing and contracts. Thank you.
Ms. Wong?
This is a great question. I have some insight given that my job is at the federal government. And yes, programs funded by, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act are being cut off, and those grants are not being issued. However, that's not the only source of federal funding. I know that my colleagues are actually starting to administer and put out a number of federal grants. I know there's things that are said in the headlines, and they are concerning. However, I know the reality of what is actually happening in the federal government. You still have many civil servants that are continuing to administer a number of grants. I will argue this too, that we have to be deeply pragmatic when we submit our grant applications to now a federal government that is run by the Trump administration. We should remove language around equity. That's not something that they want to fund, obviously, but that doesn't mean that when we get that funding, because that is our federal taxpayer money, we need to get the money that is rightfully ours here in Oakland and then administer it, obviously, with equity in mind. But we don't tell the Trump administration that we're going to do that. The other thing is, as Paula said, there are private foundations. We have the California Endowment Foundation that is right there in downtown Oakland. We have to go after that funding. I'm actually proposing to ensure that my office holder account will fund a technical assistance provider that will help not only to bring in city funding, but all the nonprofit organizations that have lost their funding will be assisted through my office to get more grant funding to them. Thank you so much.
Mr. Lowe.
I'm not so optimistic about our future in grant writing. I think that grant writing is a great thing to have, but it isn't sustainable, and we shouldn't be building our infrastructure based upon one-time funds. The real reality is that the federal government has made a decidedly different change in the way that they see philanthropic efforts, even for working locally in terms of state, and the cost cutting that they're looking at is going to really hamper what we do. Politically, we are in an environment where we could conceivably have a mayor who has tried to recall the president twice. So we shouldn't be lulled to sleep thinking that we're going to have any support at the federal level going forward. At the state level, the state is also going to experience some cost challenges, mitigating the fire and the disasters that happen in Southern California, looking at how we're going to be able to repair our infrastructure. The money just simply isn't going to be there. I know that we've had conversations in the past about having Alameda County support us, and we know Alameda County has a reserve. However, we have made so many different miscues with Alameda County in terms of accountability and managing our internal resources that it's likely that Alameda County will not give us any resources. And Alameda County is bracing for what's going to be happening for them at the state level for cuts. I do think that there are going to be philanthropic opportunities for us, but they won't be directed towards the city. They will be directed towards specific programs: environment, youth, education, maybe public safety, but they won't be grants that we can receive necessarily that will be targeted that Oakland can use.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on, and our next question is going to be for Reverend Kenneth Anderson. I'm sorry, for Kara Murray Bedell first, and then Reverend Kenneth Anderson. So here's a question. This is D2 specifics. How would you go about educating yourself so that you might evaluate the current efforts to curb sex trafficking in D2 and provide service to victims? So what additional specific efforts do you think should be made? Okay, we're starting with Kara Murray Bedell.
Yeah, this issue is huge in our district. And, You know, we've had sex trafficking in the city of Oakland for a very long time. We're a port city, and sex trafficking is very common in port cities, and so we've been dealing with this for forever to varying degrees. I actually worked for a year at a domestic violence shelter and also managed domestic violence hotlines, and the issue of sex trafficking and domestic violence are so closely correlated, and so I worked with many young women who were who had been trafficked, and it is probably the most intractable problem I've ever dealt with. And I've worked on a lot of issues, like in a lot of public safety issues, but it is really deeply felt. A lot of young women start sex work when they're in their teens. The people who brought them into sex trafficking are folks who they have like built really deeply entrenched in, of course, toxic relationships with, and getting women off of the street is really, really hard. I think the best work I've seen is when it comes from survivors themselves, and it's really deep, embedded, long-term work. That said, we can't, because it is hard, does not mean that we can continue to allow it to proliferate in the way that it has, because the people who live in the neighborhoods around this sex work are so deeply affected. I will say that San Antonio has had really strong community coalitions in order to deal with this work, and a lot of the work, the way that they have done it, is by reclaiming their streets, by having diversions and narrowing streets and cameras, and they've really built a really strong community effort in order to deal with it. So while we are doing the intractable work with survivors to help women out of it, we also have to reclaim our streets and take care of our neighbors, and that is the work that we should be starting right now.
Thank you.
As a senior pastor of 86-year-old ministry, I've been pastoring 15 years at Williams Chapel Baptist Church. I've worked with 4 city council members, 4 mayors, and when it comes to the issues of sex trafficking, many of you that are young enough can remember San Pablo was very popular when it comes to the sex trafficking. Now it's pushed up to international. And if we don't go back to the basic needs of public safety, the funds that are needed for us as Oakland, as Harold has mentioned, we're not going to get those funds from federal as we think we might be getting. It's going to be us as lovers of Oakland to say we got to put this money together to support our police. We recognize that our current governor has made a bill that you have to catch the person in the act. And I see girls every day. I have 3 daughters. I see girls every day. They are absolutely butt naked in the day, in the night, right in front of my congregation. I'm the godparent to Franklin Elementary School. I've been advocating for this for years, regardless of this position for D2. I've been in the business of making sure that San Antonio and Little Saigon and District 2 is safe. And if we don't take hold of this now in San Antonio, you'll find women in front of Lake Merritt up Crocker Highland.
Thank you. This next question is going to go to Ms. Wong, Mr. Lowe, and Ms. Murray-Bedell. The city budget has been balanced in part by not filling city staff positions. What impact has that had in terms of services for residents, particularly residents in District 2? And I'm going to add on to that even more for your 90 seconds. Would you be willing to look at Oakland City staff salaries as part of a solution to the budget?
Absolutely. The vacancy rate is high in many of our departments. It is something that is preventing us from getting the services that we need here in Oakland. One of the things, because I've actually applied to 8 different positions within Oakland City because I wanted to give back to Oakland, whether as a city staff member or as a city councilor. I did not hear back from a single one of these things. It speaks to the fact that our HR department is not being managed well. We need to have more HR analysts because this is going to be a huge return on an investment for the city, and look at what is the mismanagement of HR right now. In other cities that I've worked for example, there was the ability to be hired on a temporary basis, so that way when people were stopped at a pipeline within the hiring process, they could be brought on board immediately to start the work that is so necessary. When it comes to city salaries, one of the things that I really want to do actually is it's the executive pay is is big. Our city administrator makes $400,000. I'm actually pledging to take a pay cut myself as a symbolic gesture to then call on all of our department heads and those who make the most money to take pay cuts, because I think it's critical that those who have the most means first take that sacrifice, especially during this time of financial instability. We need to ensure that we do not go towards bankruptcy. So, and we need to ask that those who make the most means make those cuts. And absolutely, thank you.
I'd like to go back to the question that was mentioned before about District 2 related to sex trafficking. This is our moral crisis of the hour. Oakland is one of the cities that has had the highest level of sex trafficking in the country. And so for those of you who may not understand that, what that means is that youth under the age of 18 have been brought to Oakland to engage in sexual activity for pay. And I do not want to gloss over that. The thing that really disturbed me about this was that for a time, we had many people who were in government who railed on the idea of having violence in their backgrounds, but we didn't do anything to support these youth. The notion of us looking at the Scott Wiener bill, I believe it's 427, and indicating that, well, it's a victimless crime. And I say this all the time. This is not 1849 in San Francisco where the miners are coming back with pocketfuls of gold and seeking brothels. These are 18-year-olds who are on the street. And what we have to do in Oakland is we have to mitigate this by any means necessary. And that means challenging the state. Listen, we're going to sue Donald Trump forever because we understand that the things that he's doing are morally incomprehensible to us. Why would we then let youth be on the street and not sue the state for that, the same passage? We need to make sure that we arrest the Johns who are seeking sexual activity, and we protect those women by any means necessary. And I believe that that's the first thing we need to do. And by the way, they are not just on International. They are not just on 23rd or in San Antonio. They're hanging out right in the middle of 1025 2nd Avenue between 4 schools.
I answered that one, so I'll go ahead and do the city budget question. So to the point that was being made earlier, our general staff isn't paid more than most other cities. Like, they are paid in line with their work and their service. And it does mean something terrible when we don't have our city fully staffed. You know, departments across, we've talked about police, but departments across our city are feeling the squeeze of understaffing. And especially during COVID, I think our city employees made a lot of sacrifices. We haven't necessarily paid them back in kind by restaffing and supporting their work. And so it does feel essential to do that. Obviously, during a budget crisis, it feels really hard. I mentioned already that there are positions that actually make money in the city that are vacant, and for that, we absolutely should be hiring. As much as I hate parking enforcement, we should hire parking enforcement officers and other positions that can potentially move permitting along and housing, which also pays dividends in other ways, right? Which is to increase housing in the city. And so as a city council person, it definitely feels like a priority to look at those roles and support the hiring in those ways, which will hopefully lead us to a place where we can do more in the future and hire more of the positions that just take care of the city. We did talk about executive pay. I think executive pay is a fair thing to look at. I do believe that the city council should have a living wage, because in cities where the city council isn't paid a living wage, you get city councilors who are exclusively wealthy or exclusively have some other means of income to allow it. And I think we want a diverse city council regardless of who the person in the seat is. But I do care deeply about staffing our city, and I think it starts with the positions that can make money, and then hopefully we can increase to the other roles of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next question is going to start with Reverend Anderson and then Paula Thomas. And so the question is around civic engagement and trust. What would you do to promote trust and faith in public officials and in the power of city government to deliver services to improve quality of life? Reverend Anderson.
This is why I have joined this race as a man of the cloth, a pastor, someone that ministers to all people, all walks of life. We don't have memberships with dues each week. People come at free will. And obviously, we need a completely new group of city officials. It's absolutely obvious. Now, do all of us up here know the ins and outs? We're not in that position. All we can do is assume and give our solutions of recommendations. I believe that Oakland is really crying for help in different rhythms and different tones, but we're all singing the same thing. I believe that when you see someone that is genuinely trying to make things better, not having all the answers, I believe that that will increase persons, what I call in our religion, their faith, their hope, their belief. But you have to be transparent. As much as you want to be nosy in the books, as a candidate for D2, I want to be just as nosy, just trying to figure out what's going on, what is taking place, and then giving it back to the people of D2. D2 is the most diverse district in our city, and I believe we need to have different community groups reporting to you all what's taking place.
Thank you. Paula Thomas.
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think it's, I think the things that people need to realize right now is that the corruption did not start or end with Shang Tao. So we need to do more investigating to find out what else is going on and make sure that we're very transparent about letting the public know what's going on. But what I'd like to address is the sex trafficking question. I think what we need to do is meet with the police chief, Child Protection Services, and the state attorney general immediately, okay? Because everything that's going on, these are children. These girls are 14, 15, 16 years old. They're babies, okay? So I think it's child prostitution. They want to call it sex trafficking. That sounds like a real adult term. They've got children out there. And so we need to get to the bottom of what's going on. Anytime Rob Bonta can shut down a brothel in Sacramento, we should be able to shut down this stuff on East 14th. Just know that I want to stop sex trafficking, and I'm willing to donate half of my first year's salary to accomplish this. Thank you.
Okay. So this next question is going to go to Mr. Lowe and Ms. Thomas. So we're going to mix things up a little bit here, how we're going. 74% of Oakland voters passed the Fair Elections Act, which called for a new system of campaign finance whereby residents would receive vouchers to donate to the candidates of their choice. Are you committed to working to find a funding resource for a rollout of this Democracy Dollars program in 2026 and thereafter? And would you support a ballot measure tax to provide funding? So, Mr. Lowe.
I'll speak to this one and then go back to trust because I think it's both of these. The Democracy Dollars, as it was written, I had some concerns about it. For those of us who are running for office, it costs a lot of money to be able to run for office naturally. But the idea that we're giving people money once we've already come on the dais defeats the purpose of having people out there who have the ability to be here, but they can't raise the money to run initially. I'd be more interested in us changing the dynamic and lowering the fees for entry and then getting people to be able to participate. The Democracy Dollars is only going to be functional to the extent that we have the ability to be able to balance our budget. Right? We passed the measure, but we can't use the resources for that. It does speak to a little bit regarding our trust factors. Getting back to trust, I think the first thing that we should be looking at for elected officials is don't do crime. Don't do illegal things. Let's look at that as being an option first. We also need to have transparency in having office hours and having people be accountable to the community. I've been in many environments, and some of the council members have antipathy towards common discourse. They don't want to listen. I'm a social media guy. I talk to folks all the time. I'm going to create an advisory board that includes youth, business, people from different backgrounds, and that they're going to meet monthly. I think that there has to be some restorative trust in this city because we've been having people make deals and not everybody's sitting at the table, and it's very hard to have access.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas.
Okay, so you're talking about if the candidates want to use public funding and what we can do to make sure those resources are available?
So, yeah, so the question is about specifically about the Democracy Dollars program that was passed several years ago, but there's no funding, it has not been funded. And so it is about finding funding for the Democracy Dollars program And in particular, would you support a ballot measure that would be specifically to fund that?
Well, with that, I would think that we're looking at boosting economic, boosting economic growth. And the thing that we need to understand is that there's a lot that Oakland can do right now to start generating income that they're not doing to help these programs survive and grow, and so that makes money available to candidates. But the most important thing that we need to understand is that with economic growth, we're going to have to get started on some things right away and multitask. And like I said, we can't think that the tax measure is not going to do it. And I think it's a bad idea, because the tax measure is going to tax us for the next 10 years. Who knows where the money is going? Everybody is concerned about us filing for bankruptcy, but I have to tell you, when Stockton did it, it worked out real good for them. They were in the same dilemma that we have. Finances, they got their finances restructured, they reduced their debt, and they renegotiated pension payments. And a lot of this stuff happened with them the same way it's happened with Oakland. I think we need to look at that. They were out within 2.5 years. It didn't last 10 years. This sales tax is going to last 10 years. They got out of that in 2.5 years. That's what I would do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this next question will be the last question, and then we'll move to closing statements after this.
Okay, great. And this next question is going to start with Kara Murray Bedell, then Charlene Wong, and then Reverend Anderson. And so this question is around experience and priorities. And I'm going to do a two-parter. Sorry for your 90 seconds. What specific experience do you have working collaboratively? At the start there. And then what is your most impactful talent that you would bring to the city council role? And again, we're starting with Ms. Murray Bedell.
Yeah, just a really quick note on democracy dollars, which is that we did pass it. The city said that they wanted it. It would be less than 5% of the budget. And I think it would be fair to ask voters if they wanted to have it. And we talk about corruption. I think corruption is, of course, a huge problem. And corruption is best ended when it's not a nudge, but a force. And I think moving towards democracy dollars in a system where every voter equitably in the city gets to work on to decide how they want to support campaigns would be great. Okay, but about experience and priorities and specific experiences. So I have worked actually on public safety quite a bit. I didn't get to answer that question, but I worked in Albany, New York, and then I led the transition team for Mayor Brandon Scott in Baltimore. I worked on that one, and then I got tapped to lead the public safety function of Mayor Kim Janey in Boston. And I think that was perhaps some of the most exciting collaborative work I've ever gotten to do, because it put me in community with the police leadership, with the ACLU, with community members, and it was really hard work. It was at the time right after George Floyd had been killed, and people had extremely strong emotions. And I think the place that we got was about what is actually keeping us safe, and how do we take care of the people in our city. And I think my biggest superpower to that point is about building coalition. I am supported by a broad coalition of folks, including Rob Bonta, but also former council member Nikki Fortunato Bass, by a lot of community organizations, by businesses, by nonprofits. And so I feel like my biggest skill is bringing folks together for the purpose of making our city better, and I want to keep doing that.
As a pastor of 15...
excuse me, Ms. Wong, next.
I'm going to answer this in a way that actually also addresses some of the prior questions around homelessness and sex trafficking, which are two of my top priorities. As it relates to homelessness, right now, the city does an incredible, I would say not incredible, actually focus on building affordable housing. Don't get me wrong, we need affordable housing units, but we need to do things in a smarter way. The city auditor found that $60 million of our homelessness services have not been really tracked with results. I am uniquely qualified, given my work in Massachusetts. It was an effort that was recognized by Harvard University in really investing in a form of housing response that is called rapid rehousing. It costs about $11,000 per family compared to the $1 million per unit that it costs to build affordable housing. We have a 9% apartment vacancy rate. Really what it takes is just some rental assistance to take people off the streets quickly. Alongside that is we do have people people in encampments with serious drug addictions. We need to use the care court system that is now up through the county to ensure that we mandate and compel addiction treatment for those who are dealing with that. Finally, as it relates to sex trafficking, I was a board member of the Family Violence Law Center that was dealing with sex trafficking survivors and how do you get them out of that industry. We do need a few things. We need to update the three strikes law that we have against Johns. They need to be enforced immediately. The other thing is we need to have a federal and state task force because a lot of the girls that you see are actually coming from Modesto, and my time is out. Thank you so much.
As a pastor of Williams Chapel Baptist Church for the last 15 years, our budget is $500,000, and due to the priority of the pandemic, we had to make some cuts. I had to recognize I didn't need 5 musicians, maybe I only need 2. So I have identified as a pastor how you have to make some cuts in order to still thrive. I'm also a housing developer. I'm the youngest in the country building affordable housing for seniors, as well as we're very supportive of an organization called Love Never Fails that helps young girls that are part of sex trafficking. My talents are all in one. A pastor deals with a variety of things. So coming to city council is just a different title. I'm doing the work. I believe that when it comes to priorities, we got to go back to public safety. We got to make sure that we improve stable housing. We have to make sure that we support small businesses. We have to make stronger schools and youth. And somewhere the money has to come. So we can play rock, paper, scissors. It's going to come from this tax. It can come from this. It can come from that. You know, I was in Walnut Creek yesterday, and for the whole day in a parking garage, guess how much I paid? $1.25. I said, why doesn't Oakland do that?
Thank you very much. It's now time to go to closing statements, and we're going to reverse the order of the opening there was the first question. So, Ms. Murray Bedell, you're up first.
I just want to thank you all so much for hosting this forum, firstly. Thank you so much to everyone here and to everyone who's watching and to all of the sponsors for making it possible for us to share all of our perspectives with the city. I will just end by saying I love District 2. My parents were both raised in District 2. I was raised in District 2. I was born and raised in Oakland. And I love this city and I love this district. I think most of us would agree that it's not the easiest time to join the city council. I think all of us would probably agree with that. But I'm here because I love my city. And I think that my experience, my public safety experience, my housing experience, my budgeting experience have led me to this moment where I think hopefully we are at a turning point. And the turning point is a good turning point where we are in crisis, but that we will find our way out of it together. I believe deeply in co-governance models and utilizing our neighbors and community to make the hard decisions that we're going to have to make in the future. And I do believe in the city and our ability to make change. And it's not going to be easy. I've been an organizer in the city for a long time, and I have often felt dejected and the impossibility of the work. But at the end of the day, the people who live in Oakland will by and large love this city and want to work on it. And I think that is our greatest asset as a city. And I hope it's my greatest asset as a council person to utilize the skills that I've built over many years in many places to support the well-being of our city and bringing it back to health.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
Oh, and I forgot my website. It's kmbforoakland.com if anyone wants to know more. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for being here today. This is not easy in the cold and listening to people with varying degrees of activity going all at the same time. I believe that the idea of having collaboration, and I wish I could have answered that question, I've shown 35 years of activity as an adult and 10 years of activity as a youth. I was the first Youth Advisory Commission chair, and I shook the hands of Frank Ogawa and the folks who were here. I've done as much as you can do in community service that any civil servant can do. I've been in mental health, I've been in youth, I've been in education, I've been in policy, I've supported safety, and I've been in 30 different organizations in Oakland. I think that at this time, we really need somebody to be able to make sure we can meet the need of what it is to be a city again. I've been in Oakland all my life. I was born in the district. I've been married and living in the district with my wife for 27 years and 3 kids. And we need people to understand what it is that keeps us grounded, what it is to be a part of the town. I've been fortunate enough to have been in financial planning and understanding budgets and being someone who was an executive director for minority contractors and understanding how to engage unions. And I believe that at this moment, we need to make sure that people understand what it is that Oakland's not doing that we could be doing better. And I've been fortunate enough to have worked in 75 of the top 100 cities around the country looking at policy and presenting ideas and activities. And I'd love to be able to work with you.
Thank you. Ms. Wong.
Right now, Oakland is in crisis. It really is. And we need to have skill sets of people who know how to administer public government programs and know how to navigate government bureaucracies. That has been my entire career. It's being a change maker through the lens of government. Because it's not only me as a city councilor, you've got to ensure that we can move the entire city and its thousands of employees to affect change. That's the kind of work I've done. I've served as the department leader, overseeing a department of 45,000 employees, stood up multi-billion-dollar programs, entrusted by the Biden-Harris administration to stand up a program that is now funding 350 projects across the nation, including 3 here in Oakland. Again, we need folks that can hit the ground running. It's not only bringing in the resources that we need, but it's also fundamentally fixing the mismanagement of our government, because we are making decisions that are not based off of outcomes. We are making decisions based off of political favoritism. We need to really shape up our government and make sure that we are making evidence-based decisions here in Oakland, and that's what I can bring here to the job. That's why I have the endorsement of 3 Oakland mayors, 4 former District 2 council members, as well as over 100 officials and groups, including Planned Parenthood, Sierra Club, and Equality California, that recognize that I have the skill set to hit the ground running during this really uncertain time here in Oakland. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing us to have this forum. I think it's really good to hear different ideas and what everyone wants to bring to the table and how they're going to solve some of the city's problems. And I think with my background, after I was born and raised here in Oakland, I had an opportunity to graduate from San Francisco State, had an opportunity to build and own and operate a radio station in Sacramento, and I moved to Sacramento. It's a couple hours away. It's not, cities, states away. And I was able to build, operate, and manage the #1 station in the market. Okay, when it's sold for a lot of money. I think with that experience, that background, I bought another station. I did progressive talk radio. I had a lot of talkers on, Al Franken, Rachel Maddow, so I know a lot about politics. I've been following it for years. I think someone in this position would need to understand how good government works. Just yesterday, the Oakland Budget Advisory Commission did their biannual survey, and it says what people in Oakland want is a clean, safe, affordable city. And I think I know how to do that. We need to boost economic growth, strengthen public safety, and increase affordable housing and eliminate sex trafficking. I'm willing to just dig in and get started start from the ground up when I get there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me on today. I have been very blessed to be a part of this panel. I'm born and raised in Oakland, California. I was reared at 606 Long Ridge Road, the first house going up Long Ridge, and behind the house is Mandana. I know Oakland. I'm a pastor, and I care for people. My highest education is a PhD. I went beyond the walls of our congregation. We can't just talk about the crime and the issues in the 4 walls. I joined this race because someone has to show the work and do the work and be the example. We're also building affordable housing. We were partners with La Clinica de la Raza. I was the first church in Oakland to provide safe car parking for those that are living in their vehicles. I've served 4 mayors. They all know me. They've all been in my office. I've served with all 4 city council members. One of them is in the audience today. The things that were the challenges for particularly one of them there, we had graffiti. We had different problems. So I've been in the race. Regardless of a title at City Council, I'm still have been doing, will continue to do the work, even as a vice president of the Progressive National Baptist Convention, where on our state level I serve with hundreds of churches and hundreds of pastors, that we all have a dialogue trying to figure out how we can make our communities, our churches better. So again, City of Oakland needs prayer. And if any of us are smart, they'll have your chief of staff and all your staff is right up here, whoever wins.
Thank you so much. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters Oakland and our community partners, I want to thank the candidates for their participation today. We also want to thank the audience for coming to meet the candidates and for proposing your thoughtful questions. For further information about the candidates and ballot measures, please visit the League's website. Members of the League of Women Voters do the hands-on work to defend democracy and empower voters. While we never endorse candidates, we are directly involved in shaping important issues to keep our community strong. If you would like to be involved with the men and women helping make democracy work for everyone, it's easy to join the League. Again, we encourage you to visit our website at the LeagueOfWomenVotersOakland.org, and we do have a table in the vestibule.
So remember that Election Day is April 15th. In Alameda County, every voter will be mailed a ballot, so that's true here. You can vote early at one of the vote centers around Oakland, or you can mail your ballot. Make sure you sign the outside envelope, and that can be either via U.S. mail, there's no postage required, or you can drop it at one of the many drop boxes around the city. Encourage your friends and family and neighbors to vote. And if you miss the March 31st deadline to register to vote, you can still register and vote provisionally by being in person at the Registrar of Voters office or one of the many vote centers throughout the city. You can find out more at acvote.alamedacountyca.gov. So this concludes our forum. Thank you all. Okay.